Good evening, everyone. Welcome. As I call this second meeting of the Sustainable and Livable Communities Committee to order. That's easy to say. Welcome also to my co-chair, Council Member Lauren Kuby. For those who may have missed our first meeting last month, our committee covers topics related to sustainability, sustainable and livable communities. That can range from the more obvious sustainability initiatives like water, energy, or climate action, or green infrastructure, to the broad range of quality of life programs and policies that make Tempe such a great place to live, work, play, and I say learn. We've intentionally kept our initial work plan general because we hope to hear from our residents about what livability in Tempe means to them and suggestions for topics to pursue. Note that no formal votes or decisions about city programs, policies, or budgets will happen here. Our role is to explore various topics with staff and stakeholders and community members and make recommendations to our council colleagues. So we really appreciate your participation. We want this process to be transparent, inclusive, and easy for you to be part of whatever you choose to be. And you can share your thoughts with us by filling out a comment card about any item on a meeting agenda, or by reaching out to us directly with any other thoughts, questions, or ideas. Someday, when we host meetings in person again, hopefully sooner than later, it will be easier for people to speak in meetings. But for now, in this virtual environment, we need you to fill out a comment card in advance that can be read into the record for any agendized item. The link to the comment cards can be found on our committee webpage at www.tempe.gov/SLC. And you'll find contact information for committee members and staff there for non-agendized questions as well. It looks like, do we have any public comments?
Councilmember Adams, Councilmember Kuby, we do have one public comment that I will be happy to read into the record for you.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Kristen.
Sure. This comes from David Sokolowski, and it is in reference to item 3B3, the Arizona Thrives presentation that you'll hear a little bit later. It says, "Thank you, Councilmember Kuby, for being a strong advocate for public transit and climate action. However, I'm concerned about prioritization of electric vehicles in our community. Maricopa County aims to achieve a 20% reduction in emissions through both electrification and reductions in vehicle miles. It's important to distinguish the difference between these two separate goals to align with the Paris Agreement. The majority of emission reductions requires a lifestyle change to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 20% compared to electrifying 15% of the fleet. The international goal to electrify 15% of the vehicle fleet mostly applies to municipal operations, such as police cars. Electrification mostly applies to 20% of the US population living in rural communities and not in dense urban areas like Tempe and Phoenix. The goal to reduce vehicle miles by 20% mostly applies to community emissions and urban areas like Tempe, which are already served by public transit. Our population grows at a rate faster than we can adopt electric vehicles. It's estimated our population could grow by 30% by 2050. VMT continues to increase each year, and at current rates, we will fail to align with the Paris Climate Agreement. Paris achieved a 22% reduction in VMT using strategies like removing parking spaces, reducing speed limits, implementing citywide bus rapid transit, and citywide road diets in order to plant 300,000 trees. While many cities in the world implemented open streets 12 months ago in response to the pandemic, bike lanes and open streets have been made a permanent solution in response to climate change. The city of Tempe is still creating a plan for open streets, but we'll all be vaccinated by then. Hopefully the plan can still be used to help Tempe align with the Paris Agreement by 2030. I would like to pivot quickly. Planting trees in the short term compounds benefits over time as trees become established and creates a more walkable community. The longer we wait to plant trees, the hotter our climate will be. Water shortages and drought will pose even greater risk to our investments and urban forestry goals. it's important to establish tree canopy in vulnerable communities as soon as possible to ensure a greater chance of success. Today, the City of Tempe is focused on maintaining our current canopy and landscape, which will also be the case in the future when water is even more scarce.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. And this committee always welcomes public comments. According to Arizona open meeting law, though, the committee may only discuss matters listed on the agenda. Matters brought up by the public under public comment that are not listed on the agenda cannot be discussed by this committee. So, but I appreciate the comments. And I believe I'm still up. Is that correct, Kristen?
Councilmember Adams, yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so committee session items. So the next item on our agenda is item 3A, current items and updates. Item 3A1, Livable Communities Outreach Update. This item can be discussed. This item, I'm sorry, was discussed last month, and we tasked Neighborhood Services with working on a plan to reach out to all of our residents, including those that may not normally be as engaged with what's happening at City Hall, to ask people what livable means to them. I understand we will be seeing the plan next month, but we wanted to give our Neighborhood Services Manager, Shauna Warner, a minute or two to let us know what's happening so far. Shauna?
Thank you, Council Members Adams and Kuby. At the February meeting, as you mentioned, we did discuss reaching out to the community. So as an update, we will be posting the question on Tempe Forum, our online survey tool, and come back with those initial responses as well as that detailed plan you also mentioned in April. I will just say that the timing is great and that we will have some synergy with planned communication for Earth Month in April, as well as outreach on the climate action plan that will also be taking place in April, as well as future months as well. And regarding your equitable outreach request, we are going to be partnering with Unlimited Potential, which is a nonprofit partner of ours that will be doing some climate justice work around the climate action plan. That's all going to be happening in that same time frame, and that's really going to help us increase some of the responses on the question of what does make the community livable. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we will have more information to share at the next meeting.
Councilmember Adams, may I speak? What? Is she there? Shall I just speak? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. I didn't know if I should ask for your permission to speak. Councilmember Adams, you are the one in power. You are sitting on the chair of power today. So yeah, I just want to ask Shauna, when is the online forum going live?
So since we have the opportunity to partner with some of our climate action plan outreach, we were just timing that with, we're partnering with ASU as well on some of that. So it should be in this next week, if not earlier. We were just had got some information that we're going to have them look at as well. So very soon, and we'll make sure you have the exact dates.
Oh, sure. No, just curious. And thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing what our residents think livability is. We know that definitions will vary and will come from one's lived experience. And it's hard to get a full view of what everyone thinks or scientifically accurate view, but we hope to get some valuable information. And I'm hoping with the State of the Neighborhood speech coming up, there could be mention, is the timing okay there, where we can get mention of the forum?
Yes, so that'll happen April 17th. And so that forum, as well as the videos you did for that in referencing the committee, will also be tied to that.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Shauna, for all your work.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear what residents think would make Tempe more livable. The next item on our agenda is item 3A2, the animal welfare update. Councilmember Kuby, why don't you talk about that and where we are?
Sure, I'm happy to. With the chair's permission.
Always. You always have my permission.
So last week at our work study session on Thursday, the 18th, we gave a presentation from this committee to the entire council. And I think some were a little surprised at how quickly we came back with a recommendation from our council committee, because we just were instituted in February. But Jennifer, you and I are two women that get stuff done, and we wanted to show the evolution of all the animal welfare work that's been done in the city since we started a working group years ago. And Randy Keating was a part of that working group. And then when you came on in 2018, you joined the Animal Welfare Working Group. And so we did all sorts of work related to, barking dog ordinance. That was one of Councilmember Keating's passions. And we did started to work on look at hoarding, but it has a whole level of mental health concerns that we had to sort of put aside that issue for a while. And we also looked at loose dogs, different issues related to tethering of dogs. And then we started almost 2 years ago, a community cat management program. And we received funding from Jerry Brock, very generous funding to enable us to pay for some spaying and neutering. And then last year, we received some $10,000 funding from the City Council to essentially let us walk the talk. So we got funding to buy cages, humane cages to trap the kitties. And we got funding to have covers, but we didn't need to spend it for covers because the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center, you hear my dogs barking, they contributed those using leftover recycled materials. So that was wonderful. And we thought it was important that we look at our own facilities and make sure that we're managing the colonies properly at our own facilities. So we had this neighborhood pilot with 4 different neighborhoods, and it was very successful, very popular, even amongst people who don't necessarily like cats. I think people hear cat management and they think it's all, about helping the cat populations to thrive. It's about managing cat colonies and cat populations. And there was one meeting that was a little bit contentious with some neighbors, and one neighbor who was very opposed to cats and the impact of feral cats in his neighborhood ended up offering to build a feeding station. He was so impressed with the program. So we were having amazing success with the neighborhood cat program, and we opened it up to other neighborhoods. And that is when the floodgates opened, where a staff person who's associated with our animal welfare group, Kristen Gwynn, was spending so much time, like 10 to 20 hours a week, just on this volunteer effort. So I realized we need to go back and we need to double down and think about how do we consider finding a way to put staff on a program that already exists, it's already successful, but has no staff. And animal welfare, as you all know, it has no home in Tempe. There's no Department of Animal Welfare, Office of Animal Welfare. So we thought if we're running a program, we really need to have, it has to be a professionally applied standards to it, and we need to have staff. So we presented that to council, and I'd say it was like mixed reviews. I think everyone was really, really enthralled by the program and by the opportunities, not just to look at cats, like it's way beyond that. It's to look at how we interact with urban wildlife, how dogs, off-leash dogs should be handled. We have lots of complaints from our residents that calls to PD get unanswered about unleashed dogs because the police are very busy with other issues, understandably. So we also have COVID-19 exposing so many insecurities, housing insecurity, food insecurity in our city, and there's a direct connection between animal welfare and human welfare. And so we saw all those interconnections. So we had a really robust discussion. We're charged now with giving information to the city manager, and they're trying to come up with a way that perhaps we can more creatively fund this program. And so we're thinking about opportunities there. There's been some preference to have it, be extended, have the decision made in April. So we're looking at that possibility. So we still have some work to do. We have hope that it will be funded because it's so important to the city and it's so important to our residents that we continue to be unique amongst any city in Arizona. We really have heard that from so many animal welfare organizations say, we don't do the work you do. We don't do the community education, the outreach, the organizing, the planning, the assisting in all the spay, neuter, and surgery, and all the feedback, and then being the one-stop shop for animal welfare issues. I know I've been a little long-winded here, so Councilmember Adams, forgive me for that. I'm both very excited about the possibility of us really investing in animal welfare and actually making a program that we already have staff. So I hope that we'll succeed, and we'll come back in April with really good news.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubey. You did a great job explaining that that scenario, what happened with the council the other night, and so I really appreciate you doing that. I do have a cat actually right next to me. I don't know if y'all can see that, but his name is Casper, and he always wants to get in on everything. So here he is.
Councilmember, can I mention one more thing?
Sure, go for it.
I forgot to mention, there was discussion last week about the process, like how do supplemental requests for in our general operations budget, how do they get chosen? So our staff comes up with supplemental requests. It's part of their process. So a department will say, we need this more staff, or we need these supplies, and then they're ranked by the city manager and other staff, and then the council receives that ranking and then approves it. So some are asking, why shouldn't it be placed into that supplemental process? Well, it's important to note that there is no process for council to submit supplemental requests. We don't do that. But what has happened many times in the past is that there have been council initiatives that have come forward that come with a staff need. And so we've seen that with pre-K, certainly. We've seen that with our urban forestry program. We've seen that with education efforts. We've seen that with many Tempe Works. There's a host of issues that have been council initiated that get funded apart from the supplemental requests but get put into that budget year. And there was also concern that maybe this is too late in the process, but I would kind of affirm that this is March and the budget gets finalized and approved towards the end of June. So we do have about 3.5 months, and that very much is within the time frame. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to get this done. Should we choose to do it? Should we see animal welfare as a priority in our city?
Thank you for sharing that. That was good observations that we've done it before in the past. So I'm really glad that you shared that, Councilmember Cubey. Next, we'll move on to 3B, new items for consideration, and we'll begin with item 3B1, which is dog parks, which I have been pushing for dog parks since I was elected. And when I was going around knocking on doors, people mentioned that they'd love to have more dog parks. So, and I know we worked on this with Councilmember Keating also. So I believe Craig Hayton has some updated information for us about how and when we might see additional dog parks in Tempe. Craig?
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to present here tonight, Council Members Adams and Cubey. I put together just a brief slideshow here, just really to keep me on track more than anything else, but I appreciate the opportunity to follow up a conversation that we had back at the Animal Welfare Working Group in 2019. And I just want to frame the conversation first and foremost around just the key performance measure within the Parks and Recreation team and community services. And it is under the quality of life strategic priority performance measure 3.16, which is our opportunity to provide quality experiences through the areas that we manage, not just the programs or to 3.17, but we also manage a lot of open space within Tempe, and we want to make sure that we're providing quality experiences, and we believe the dog parks certainly are a key component to that. So next slide, please. All right, we're going to spend our time on this slide. Love the picture on the right. We have that as one of our background slides on the current Parks and Rec master plan that is in draft form. Want to make it just a quick plug for that. But just a couple key pieces that I would love to really run through here on this slide and just pause here tonight is in 2019, I had an opportunity with the working group at the time just to provide some background information. Tempe has 6 dog parks really spread throughout the city, the majority of them north of the US 60 in Tempe, but we have our largest one at the Tempe Sports Complex. So we know that there is interest to add additional dog parks within Tempe. So we really wanted to work on a mechanism to identify where some of that interest would lie. And one of the things that we talked about during that working group meeting was to really just seek input during various outreach opportunities. And I just want to report back on a couple key components of that with the outreach effort bullet point. And we have done the outreach to see what the interest is in dog parks as well as some other park amenities and see where it kind of lies alongside of that. In park improvement projects, we work very closely with Shauna Warner's team to make sure that as we look at significant improvements within parks, that we would survey the residents of the area to see exactly what they would like to see within the park when it comes to a specific amenity. But at that time, we may be soliciting input for a playground or armada, or letting you know that we're going to add some additional trees. But we've also solicited input at Meyer, Mitchell, and Redden, which were the three main park projects in 2019 that we sought public input on. We asked the question, though we may not be adding these amenities at this time. We would love to know what you think about amenities such as dog parks, off-leash areas, skate parks, sand volleyball courts, and then which of these would you not like to see within the park? So we have that information from those three parks. We asked it similarly at the Clark Park project recently, but we also asked this question at a couple key planning events that we were working through in processes. First was the part of the Kiwanis Park Management Plan, and we asked the question on additional amenities within the park. And a dog park was one of the ones that folks were interested in, as well as exercise equipment. So we identified one of our key recommendations within this plan. We have multiple recommendations, but was to look at areas. We gave ourselves the flexibility anywhere within that park to consider additional amenities, such as a dog park and exercise equipment. So we've listed it within that plan, not saying it has to go within that park specifically. But while we sought that input from the public during that process, we wanted to make sure that we at least left that door open there. And then most recently, the larger planning effort that we are at the tail end of now, and at the really exciting place, was during the Parks and Rec master planning process. And one of the key components to the master planning process was a public survey where we had over 1,800 responses as an opt-in survey. And dog parks was, out of a list of 23 different amenities that we provided folks, was the fourth highest scoring of what folks really wanted to see. And then we had an opportunity then, as part of that process, after we heard from residents, we worked with our consultant Planet Communities to identify what is called the level of service for each park amenity, some key park amenities. And a level of service really is our opportunity to show as a ratio of amenity per 10,000 people, where our number sits currently. So we have 6 dog parks currently. That was roughly 0.31 dog parks per every 10,000 people. So the reason why that is an important number is that as population increases in Tempe, even as a landlocked city, we know that we have opportunities to increase population, that we should be adding additional dog parks and other amenities based on that ratio as population increase. We received some input from the public, but also from Mayor and Council during a late 2020 presentation. We've increased the service level, or the level of service, for dog parks in this upcoming draft Parks and Rec Master Plan by 20%. So we're recommending that we would add 2 dog parks over the next 10 years within Tempe. And then we've identified within our strategies of the plan that it just wouldn't be a requirement of the city to add it, but that we'd also look for potentially publicly available private partnerships and opportunities to do so. So there is a part of a development agreement for a property at College and Weber. We have written into that development agreement that there would be a publicly available dog park for small dogs in that area. So we would look for those partnerships as well as considering within our park system. So the next steps piece is taking all of this public input, and then especially the Parks and Rec Master Plan that says we're recommending that we add 2 over the next 10 years. And certainly we could receive direction from Mayor and Council at the April work study session to potentially increase that number. So at this point, nothing is finalized, but we are making our recommendations. But one of the key pieces in understanding dog parks is that there are so many different sizes and potential locations for them, that one of the first recommendations from a very high level that this plan has is that we would undertake an equity study, so that we would look at programming, but also park access and amenities, so that we actually, for dog parks specifically, would actually place them and consider placing them in areas where they would make the most sense and that they would serve the residents that are likely in the most need. So we know that we are going to be adding a couple dog parks within Tempe, but we also want to take, I would anticipate, 6 or 8 months and say, where would this, along with other amenities that we know that we think we need more of, diamond fields, pickleball courts, and those sorts of things, some splash and play elements, where would we be best suited to put these, looking through an equity lens? And we know how important that is within the sustainability and livable communities, that we don't just assume that we need to identify an area as staff, but we really want to work with somebody to make sure that we look through an equity lens. And that's really our first key next step. So I'd be happy to take any questions. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a quick update. But I would point everybody to the Parks and Rec Master Plan that is currently out on Tempe Forum for comment, but certainly be willing to take any questions at this point. Thank you.
Councilmember Adams, are you going to go first, or do you want me to?
You can go first, Councilmember QB.
Thanks so much, Craig. And I love all the puns that just, I don't know, there's something about dogs, like people, you were talking about the tail end of the presentation. So really glad to hear about public-private partnerships, and we welcome, of course, developments that come in that offer dog parks. I remember back in the days when I was in college or out of college, and you couldn't find an apartment complex that allowed dogs, and now they're so welcoming, it seems generally. But I also want to introduce the idea of partnerships with schools. And I've actually been in a conversation with someone in the school district, and I shouldn't reveal that because I didn't get permission from her, but there's an opportunity to perhaps have some small gated areas, a gated area I'm thinking of. I don't mean to be cagey about this, but I should have talked to her first, but where we could convert an already gated area into a dog park with just the addition of maybe a watering station and a waste bag station, that kind of thing. And so if that's the case, should I connect her with you or with the city manager? What would be the best way of approaching that?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember QB. And I think that really scores a great point at looking at partnerships with school districts, not just with dog parks, but also with other park amenities, whether it's fields or even play areas in neighborhoods that may not have them. So I'd be happy to have that conversation. I would anticipate that we would be able to reach out also as staff as part of our first steps, looking holistically at all those elements, and then make sure that we're also working with like our ADA coordinator to make sure that if there's an area that already exists, how can we make sure that we're providing access as well? So I'm certainly open to suggestions on the best way to connect with that.
And I think in some cases they're finding that people are effectively using these enclosed places as dog parks. They might as well have the benefit of the city installing a small water station, which is a lot cheaper than the city installing fencing. And then there could be some kind of partnership. And then also, you know, a pilot. If it doesn't work, if people aren't cleaning up after themselves, it could be seen as a pilot. We need responsible behavior from our dog owners too. So I'm really interested in the partnership with schools. And I've heard said that, you know, in Tempe, we don't turn down school bonds. We just don't. And we do lots of overrides, and with really great margins from our voters. And you may not have kids in school, but there's areas in the schools, public areas that you could benefit from, either walking or playing sports or you know, walking your dog. So I'm really interested in this issue. So I'll connect you with the person I'm mentioning and being so cagey about, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have some more things, but do you want to, Jennifer, you want to just go back and forth between us?
Sure, we could go back and forth. You know, we have such a history of working with the schools on so many different issues. So I am so glad that you had that conversation, Councilmember QB, with this secret person about the dog parks. And that's what a great use of resources to partner with our schools for the dog parks. And I'm super excited that you put that up tonight. And it just says, you know, the thing about the dog parks that people sometimes don't realize, especially if they don't have dogs, is it's a great way to meet your neighbors. People have, you know, wonderful interactions. They get to know each other. They come out of their houses to take their dogs to the dog park. It's healthy for the humans and it's healthy for the dogs. So I'm just super excited to expand our dog parks throughout the city. And thank you for having that conversation with your mystery person, Councilmember QB. So I'll turn it back to you now.
Yeah, I also want to ask, I know Clark Park is an example of a dog park that was created through the Marion Corridor program. And I believe I think there were multiple years that funded it, or were there multiple neighborhoods? I forget. Was it both?
It was both.
Right.
It was.
It's not cheap. We know it's not cheap to install a dog park. And then there's maintenance costs that come along with it, maintenance operation costs. But I'm wondering if it's possible, I mean, a neighborhood is thinking about it that really wants it, but it's not in the future because of our budget, or it's not in the future because, or it's off in the distant future because we're only going to build 2 in the next 5 to 10 years. I wonder if it's possible to have a best practices guide for a Marion Quarter grant, and maybe holding up the Clark Park as example, but I don't know if that's listed in the suggested possible grants that people can go after, but people may not even be thinking of that. But if there was some kind of a template, or you could do this, and this is generally what it requires for this kind of a space, it might, it might encourage neighbors to join together to do a dog park together.
Yeah, and we certainly work very closely with Sean and her team for all of the Marion Quarter grant, kind of framing what we think is, I think we've listed it as, easy and more difficult to get through just based on the coordination that's necessary.
Yeah.
You bring up some very valid points on, we've estimated, and this is one of the tough parts about the Parks and Rec master planning process, is trying to affix a dollar figure for some of these amenities, so you can try to kind of itemize what's.
Uh-oh. Am I frozen, or is? Uh-oh.
Craig is frozen
Oops.
right now.
He's gone.
Come back, Craig. We won't bite.
Well, in the meantime, before you, oh, there you are. Are you back?
I hear him. You there, Craig?
Am I here now again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. There you are.
I'll get off of Wi-Fi and I'll get on data. Let's see if that's a bit more reliable. Sorry about that. I was just going to mention that with the Parks and Rec master plan, we try to identify a per cost amenity cost, and dog parks, because they can vary in size, we've identified about 250,000 per acre. So Tempe Sports Complex is just over an acre, the dog park there. So that just gives you an idea when you look at accessibility, potential walking paths. Sprinklers are usually best. We've got Clark Park in the middle of a flood irrigation park, so it is not available for use significantly throughout the year. And then we've also got, with the Marion Quarter grants, one of the internal challenges we work through is there are no operating funds associated with that. So we just have to get creative on how we would identify the maintenance needs for something like that. So not saying it's not doable, it just tends to be a bit more of a difficult ask for us to coordinate that. So obviously the smaller, the cheaper, the less maintenance it requires. And you don't need multiple groups going in over multiple years to potentially make that happen.
So when you're looking at the efficacy of some locations, aren't there some locations that could be better than others that might rise to the top because they already have some fencing? So you don't have to add, four sides of fencing, and you can just make a unique shape. Or I know Daly Park has some fencing that some people have advocated could just be enclosed, and it wouldn't necessarily mean a square rectangular dog park shape, but I've heard people say there's a place out, I've been out there and it's sort of out of the way, which might be a good thing. Some neighbors don't like to have dog parks too close to them, but are you looking at that opportunity too, where some parks are kind of halfway there because their fencing is already there, it could just be supplemented?
Yeah, I think that is one way to reduce costs for sure. And Daly Park in the kind of northeastern section outside beyond the ball fields has some shared fences. One of our biggest challenges is just making sure that we get concrete from an access standpoint. So, and those are the things we just have to weigh out. So each one's kind of individually weighed on what some of those opportunities are. I would anticipate that we would address the equity study for dog parks and other amenities very similarly as we would the aquatics needs assessment, where we identified kind of sectors within the city that could do with certain amenities of certain size or scale. And I think those would be ones that we could then drill into to say, oh, this one seems to be a really good fit in this area because it has these things already built in. We did the same thing with pickleball when we added it over the Tempe Sports Complex a few years ago, for sure.
And then I know there's been, I've heard from a number of residents about wanting to see a water feature, not necessarily a new feature, but a place where dogs can, I don't know if it's Sing Meadows, that might be problematic, But there are other places where maybe dogs could be welcome to jump in the water, especially in the summertime. And there's some dogs that are real water dogs, and that might be a great amenity. You've probably heard about that from residents, since I was just hearing anecdotally. And I also heard that in Sing Meadows, they're opening, it's a private establishment, the Bark Bodega. Have you heard about that?
I have not. Somebody mentioned it to me just kind of off the cuff recently, but I haven't heard any of the details or looked into it. But
yeah, it's private, and it's also to have a restaurant. It must be the cafe. I'm not sure if it's a cafe associated with Sing Meadows, but it does have a membership fee, and the membership, it's kind of complicated if you look at it. It's you can get time, you can get monthly, you can get yearly, 1 dog, 2 dogs, 3 dogs. It has all these different levels. But I was really interested to see that, and I wondered whether, I actually want to call find out if there's a Tempe discount, because there are some benefits that Sing Meadows has from being in Tempe with rent and all, and I wondered if there was a possibility to pass along some savings to our Tempe residents. But I could do that, privately. I'm not asking that as part of the committee, but it's just interesting to see a lot of movement in this area. Like, people are recognizing that dogs and dog need amenities, and the people need amenities as well. So.
Chandler Gilbert that has a pond for at their dog parks at Cosmo, and I know that is something that's a rather kind of a large amenity as a water feature, rather than like a splash area for dogs.
Yeah. Is there any possibility that Kiwanis Lake could be a splash amenity, or not a splash amenity, that could be a section could be cordoned off that dogs could swim in?
We don't allow people to get into that lake, so I'm not sure what code requirements we would have there either. Even it's a waterway of the U.S., there may be some challenges. Right.
Okay.
That's a good, Councilmember Cubey, that's a really good question. I'm thinking that I know we're asking you lots of questions tonight, Craig, but could you come back with answers to some of our questions, so we can, see what we can and can't do? Because
I can connect with.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'd be happy to connect with Kristen or Alex and get a list of questions and have a more of a targeted follow-up. Absolutely.
Okay. And when you are doing the plans, are the dog parks, they're included in the plans, right? When we're looking at new areas?
So we've addressed existing infrastructure currently, or we are addressing, but we know that through the Parks and Rec master plan, but there's also a desire to add new amenities within parks as well. So we will do that as a secondary effort. We're really working on, through our asset management approach, adding what we consider base amenities within parks now, a standard of trees at 25 trees per acre, playgrounds with certain standards, and then a shade element through a ramada as well as some kind of site furnishing stuff, drinking fountains, garbage recycling containers. So we're working through that currently. There's no reason why we can't. We don't have to wait for that to end to start adding new amenities, but I want to make sure that we're taking that funding through to at least have that identified within the 5 year before we really have moved on beyond that.
And then, of course, people could donate to the city for dog parks too, correct?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was actually approached by somebody at the end of last year about wanting, as a nonprofit, to start donating some funds to the city. We've had some conversations. We think the best way to do that is to create a formal donation policy outside of our Living Tree Memorial Program and Trees for Tempe that at least provides a framework to make that happen. So we've got that on the radar. We've listed it within the plan, and we're actually already working through that as staff, so that we can clear the path, so that we can do so legitimately, which would include outreach, what it would look like, and considering maintenance.
Okay. Good.
One more question I thought of.
Sure, go for it.
Best practices in dog parks. Is there a thought that you should have a small dog section and a large dog section, or an active dog section and a lazy dog section? I mean, or is it just a one size fits all?
I think it's going to depend on the amount of space that we've got available that we can consider those options. We love getting public comment and outreach. I think that's a valid question in a regional or a special use area. So if we were to add a dog park at Kiwanis that may be the size of the Tempe Sports Complex, maybe that's a valid question to ask at the time. it's a little over an acre. If you've got a quarter of an acre, it may be a bit more difficult to have some areas for different size or, activity dogs. But I think that's a great question for a regional park like Kiwanis if we were to move forward with something like that there.
Good.
Thanks so much. Thanks for answering all those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, Craig. Thanks so much. That was very helpful. And I think that if Councilmember Cubey is okay with having you come back and discuss this more with some more information for us, like you gave us a lot of information tonight, but just to keep this dialogue going.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Great. We'll move on to item 3B2, the International Green Building Code. I believe we have Braden Kay, our Sustainability Director, and several members of his staff here to give a presentation. So I'll turn it over to them. Braden?
Thank you, Council Member Adams. Really appreciate the opportunity for us to talk with you tonight. So just to jog your memory, we have passed our first climate action plan in 2019. And with that plan, we have 4 highlight actions. One of the highlight actions was the International Green Construction Code. So the International Green Construction Code was listed as one of the key items that we can invest in for resilience to extreme heat, because that code could allow us to incentivize more shade, more use of cool materials. It's also, the International Green Construction Code is also an opportunity to reduce the carbon intensity of buildings. So City of Scottsdale has been using the International Green Construction Code for almost over 10 years now, and has been consulting us and giving us advice. But tonight you're going to hear from staff from the Community Development Department about the work that they've been doing in examining the code. And so they're going to give you an update in the code, and you can have a conversation with them about how Tempe can consider using this code into the future. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Donna Sullivan Hancock and Dino from Community Development to talk through the International Green Construction Code. And they have a PowerPoint for tonight as well.
Donna, are you ready to present?
Yes, I do. Okay, I thought I was muted. Okay, yes, I am. Good evening, members of the Sustainable and Livable Communities Committee. I wanted to say that. Council members Adams and Cubey. Thank you for having us tonight. So my name is Donna Sullivan Hancock. Right now, I'm the interim deputy community development director over building safety. And then presenting tonight is Mr. Dino Accardo. Dino's our plan review manager, but he's now serving as our Tempe building official. So the code comes out of the building official is the code man. So earlier this year, building safety staff was tasked with carrying out an objective preliminary technical review of the 2018 International Green Construction Code. So our task was to provide the information to Tempe staff that might be interested in a possible Tempe Green Code program. So at Braden's invitation, we are here to provide this brief overview. We do have a short PowerPoint and to answer questions or as you desire. So if you want us to move forward, Dino will go ahead and start his presentation.
Sure, that would be great. If Dino's ready to go, I think we should just go for it. So thank you. Okay. Looks good already. I like it already. It's got lots of green on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of green. I did that purposely. So
thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Thank you for having us, Council Member Cubey and Adams. Thank you, Braden, for that introduction. That helps sort of set it up. And Donna, thank you. That helps set it up. I'm going to get to the slideshow here. And so it was a brief overview that we performed. Can everybody see this? I hope.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Very
Looks good.
I just want to be sure. So yes, we did perform a brief overview. And what we're going to touch on today is what is currently adopted in our region. We took a look at what some of our neighboring communities might have been doing. And we're going to update some of the information here because we've recently been introduced and received a great email and outreach from Anthony Floyd, who's part of Scottsdale and who oversees their green building program. So very insightful, very experienced. So he's going to help us out in our adventure greatly, I'm sure. And he was a great gentleman in the way he's already reached out to us. So just to let you know, we also will provide to you some IGCC history. IGCC, the International Green Construction Code. So that's an acronym. And just some of the technical overview. And then some insights into adoption and enforcement and what we saw might be some of the impact, because from our standpoint, in being a technical staff charged with enforcement of adopted codes, our mind, just by who we are, automatically goes in that direction. And the thought of is, how do we apply this? How do we enforce this charge, this responsibility that we've been given in our community, if that was the case? So we always look at that scenario and what that looks like. And we'll give you just some brief insights into what that might look like going in. So as we said, Scottsdale adopted this code. They are currently on the 2015 IGCC, and we've received some information that they're working towards going to with the 2021. They're going to skip over 18, obviously by the year that they're already in 21. This was effective. This adoption by them was effective January 1, 2017. It was adopted as voluntary, but they are trying to make strides. Anthony Floyd had explained that they are now making strides, to give you some updated information, into going more down the mandatory path. But currently for commercial, it becomes mandatory when it's part of the planning and zoning bonus. So that's what it looks like in Scottsdale. Some of the history and development. Well, the 2018 IGCC is a fully integrated code. It's developed as a comprehensive code that's enforceable, usable, and adoptable. And this is important because when we say integrated, one of the things we found is that this particular edition, preceded by the 12 and 15, this 18 edition was integrated into all the other family of codes that we currently have adopted. So we, in the city of Tempe, have currently adopted the 2018 I-Code family, which is the IBC, the International Building Code, the IRC, the International Residential Code, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, on and on. This is integrated into those codes, and it could be cross-referenced. It was looked at from a comprehensive standpoint, and they integrated it. The other codes, probably not so much by what the information we've looked at and saw. So this is a solid code from that standpoint. It's also enforceable, usable, and adoptable. And because it was integrated, and that's where the code itself talks about that, and it conveys that to you in its actual administrative section of under Chapter 1. And that is, it has provisions in it that can be used, that it's a reachable goal, right, if it was adopted. Whereas the earlier versions would have had to be more heavily amended to be more functional in a community. This one, you would want to amend any code for our city, but maybe there was less amendments that would be needed to make it more useful, okay? Just some brief technical overview for you. So this code is comprised of 11 total chapters. It's a young code. It's not a large document. Its purpose is to provide minimum requirements for high performance green buildings that will increase environmental performance and economic value over time. It also seeks to establish an indoor environment that supports the health of occupants and enhances the satisfaction and productivity through integration of preferable building materials and water efficient and energy efficient systems. Now, I'm reading that to you because it's important, because it also establishes an interior environment. And when you look at this code, it's concerned about the health of the occupants from the standpoint of off-gassing, VOCs. So it goes a little bit deeper, not just outdoor air intake that's required in the mechanical code. This goes into what is the quality of that air that we're bringing in. So it has another dynamic to it, another dimension to it to consider. And even to myself, being in this industry for a very long time as a code professional, I do find it somewhat interesting in how this code has reached into areas where my familiarity with the codes didn't. So it's sort of groundbreaking from that standpoint, you know, going beyond the energy code. And this code only applies to new commercial buildings, new portions of buildings, and new systems in existing buildings. So that's really the way this code would be applied. That's the way it was structured and designed. We could, if it was to be considered to be adopted, you can always adopt codes and amend them and change them in the way that ours works for our city and what our vision is, right? And us in building safety would be a part of that. And we would partner with any thought process along those lines. But definitely you can always adopt and amend as we see fit, if that is something that we want to move forward with. So here's some chapters that to consider that we would have to really be focused on, because chapters 1 through 4, you have, out of those 4 chapters, you have administrative and definitions. I would say the definitions in this code in particular are very important to consider. It's a new code, it's a young code. We have to understand those definitions because these are new developments. These are new technology from a technical standpoint, and definitely from our staff's experience. So these are things that we would really weigh heavily on, okay? But we have the administrative section under 1, and then the other 2 chapters are simply reserved. There is no text. So that's how young this code is. There's only 11 total chapters. So the code is still probably in its development. We're going to find how it changes from edition to edition, from cycle to cycle. And that'll be interesting to see over the years, just like the energy code did back in its inception. But we have chapter 5, site sustainability. And that's an interesting chapter in and of itself, because you're talking about site selection and development, very important. Mitigation of heat island effect and transportation impacts, light pollution reduction. Chapter 6, water use efficiency, big for our region. I don't need to say that. Site and building water use reduction. So not just site, but also building. Landscape design and irrigation. Now we have some already in place measures along those lines, but this code will expound on those. So we'll go a little bit further. Chapter 7, energy efficiency. We've already adopted and enforced the 2018 IECC, the International Energy Conservation Code. However, this goes beyond that. And this section talks about on-site renewable energy systems, efficiency for buildings and their appliances that are within them. So it's important. Chapter 8, indoor environmental quality. I touched on that briefly in the beginning, which they call IEQs. Indoor air quality and outdoor air delivery systems. Daylighting and lighting quality. What is the lighting we're providing and what is the function of the space? That's how that ties together. Low emitting materials. We talked about that briefly in the beginning. VOC, off-gassing. What paint are we using? What's our interior covering? What type of carpet? That's the way this code reaches. And that creates a better interior environment for our residents, for the occupants of the building, however, whatever the building's use is. Chapter 9, materials and resources, construction waste management, diversion of 50% of non-hazardous construction and waste material. Critical component to this code, not just the site orientation of the building, where the building's built, its proximity to public transportation, our light rail, for example. But this talks about the waste management. How are we going to deal with those materials that are produced or left over, those remnants of materials, those debris. Chapter 10, construction plans and operation, energy commissioning process. I'm sure you've all heard of that. Measurement and verification, and functional performance testing, FPTs. In a voluntary program, now we have some state preemptions from us requiring them to have measurement and verification. However, if it's a voluntary program, we would have a customer before us. The thought is we would probably have a customer before us that was entering into this as a green building, and who is very serious about green building and understands what he's entering into, and that is an integral part into ensuring the performance of that building as a green building. So, and from a voluntary aspect, we would expect some partnership along those lines. I'll move on real quick. So adoption and enforcement. So when we took a look at it, and we took a look at Scottsdale, we have a choice in our city, as we always do. And in this particular case, we can adopt it as voluntary or mandatory, something to consider as we move forward. But what we would say and recommend is that we would amend this code for Tempe Green Building Code. Just to throw that thought out. It's our code. We can seek outside input, advice, see what others have done, but we need to consider what Tempe needs. What is our vision? What are our goals? What is our stock of existing buildings? What is the measures that we want to take for our new buildings? What do we see our community as? So it's important for all of that, for all of us to come together in a larger, more robust team to provide that input to this code development. Third-party review and inspection funded by the applicant. And what this means is if there is any adoption, we are currently, for our resources, our staff, we're not staffed and ready to enforce this code. So third-party review and inspection as funded by the applicant would be very important to ensure that the provisions are being complied with, but we would still have to have a certain quality control measure that we take currently if we use third-party review for our current reviews. We go through a quality control process where we'll make sure that we'll do a review when they come back in to make sure that those documents are being reviewed in an orderly fashion, a timely fashion, consistent with our policies and our standards. So we would have to have some training and development of internal staff in order to perform that. But the ongoing we would lean towards third-party review. And if down the road we wanted to provide our in-house services, how we have been doing, by the way, for a couple of years now, primarily in-house services, we would require additional staffing and training. And it would look more like a green building program, because what I want to offer to you to consider is that, and what we found is that just like in Arizona, they provide a green building designation to their applicants and their permit holders. So what we would consider and what we would offer to you to think about is we would provide a green building C of O. There would be a GB designation, a GB type of permit that follows the life of the building. Once a green building, always a green building. So that enforcement aspect is very important to consider. And I feel obligated to offer that thought process because that is integral in the enforcement aspect. Is there's a commitment to it, whether it's voluntary or not, because if it becomes part of bonus, it becomes mandatory. So now that's rolled into it. And that basically concludes this presentation. And I'd be happy to open it up to any questions you might have.
Councilmember Cubey, would you like to ask questions first?
Sure, thank you so much. Thank you, Dino. Thank you so much, Donna. It's just a delight to see this presented. It's frankly, it's one of the reasons I ran for office in 2014. Not this is about me, but we established a sustainability commission. I think from the first meetings, there was discussion about adoption of the IGCC. So I'm really delighted that it's on the table. I also know that our climate action plan that was adopted almost universal, I think maybe even universally, the council did call for adoption of the IGCC. You know, optional, it talked about optional in different variations, but it really called for attention as one of its major actions. And I know also that sorry, guys, I muted myself. I know that the Sustainability Commission also has you presented to them. They've been just passionate on this topic for quite a long time. So I'm really glad we're getting an airing of this. It's so important. And I think our committee can help to provide, find some of the will amongst other council members and make that argument that it's time and maybe way past time for adoption. Now, I do have a couple of questions that maybe I can begin and ask of you or Donna. But one is, well, first of all, could community development, what do you need to get this adopted? It's, let's say, voluntary by the fall. What would you need? What resources did you need and do you need? And did you ask for them in your supplement? But what do you need to get this adopted as a voluntary code by the fall?
I can answer that. So this is Donna. What we did actually do have a supplemental in right now for one person to start this program. It's a little bit bigger than building safety, so we would welcome participants of staff throughout the city. It's going to take a lot of work in planning it and deciding how we want to do it. I think it bears mentioning that it's a very meaty code. It's not wimpy at all. And so once a green code, always a green building. So that's very important for us to consider. But to be able to do it, we were thinking it would probably take us about 1 year to do it. And the code would have to be, almost every code is amended. This would have to be probably heavily amended based on what we want. So that's why the team effort. We would have to kind of collaborate our way through this as what's going to work best for Tempe. And then some staff training, and basically the desire to do it. So, I mean, it can be done. Dino is certainly capable of doing the amendments. He's a master amender. And, we can do it, but we direction and, then can apply our service. We can scramble when we need to, but we think we happen. And I think it's going to be difficult. I'll be honest. This came up as part of the incentive program, and that's when we first started looking at it, the zoning incentive, and that is how Scottsdale handles it, but it does not have to be part of an incentive program. It can be, a voluntary program.
Sure, and of course, I mean, I'm very interested in looking at a mandatory aspect of it too, and following Scottsdale lead. I like to be in the lead, and we make waves in the desert, but I'm willing to accept Anthony Floyd's lead here. But I know it is difficult. I know it's not a simple thing. I know there's a lot of adaptations and edits that need to be made. It's not simple. But you asked about, like, is there the will and or the desire to do this? And I would point to the adoption of the Climate Action Plan in 2019. We had extensive public engagement, probably more than any other issue that I've seen, maybe short of just our general plan that we do every 10 years. But we saw incredible community engagement with this issue, and we've seen, from our Sustainability Commission commissioners, the need and the urgency. And then, the council did vote to approve this, and it was a couple of years ago, and it did call for adopting it. So I do think, I guess I would need to know, like, what more do we have to do to show you guys that that's a priority? If I have to take it back to council and ask, was this priority item that we voted for still a priority? I mean, we could do that, but I think we have a priority myself. But whether, how we do it is the question, and how fast we do it and how we invest in it. Because I realize, not naive, that does take investment. So
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And then we always talk in Tempe about wanting to be a model for other cities, but also for the business community. So if we're gonna vault up this the IGCC, then we should walk the talk, and we should make sure our buildings comply and model it. And so how do we get to the place where Tempe will require that all our new city builds adopt the IGCC and use the IGCC? Because we're talking about new fire stations, right? Fire station 2, 3, and 8. And, those are projects that might be funded in the CIP. We still have yet to decide finally, but how do we, Dino and Donna, how do we get to the point where we can make sure that that's required of Tempe builds, new Tempe builds?
Can I step in here for a second, Councilwoman?
Sure.
So I think that's appropriate question for Marilyn DeRosa and Julian and the engineering and transportation team. I believe, I'll let Dino and Donna answer, but I believe that any kind of city policy regarding new city building construction would be handled by engineering, transportation, and then anything on private property, whether it's voluntary or mandatory, would be done by community development. Donna, is that your understanding? And we can bring engineering and transportation back next month to talk to you about what the city building policy process would look like. Donna, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I do agree that, we handle private development projects and engineering does the CIP projects. For us to move forward, though, to answer the question would be really the policy decision from council. We're here to serve. We're here to do what we're asked to do. We will do it. I think the CIP stuff, I think they would be willing to also do green buildings. But like I said, it's really based on your direction or council's direction and policy for us to move forward on any of this. That's where I feel like we are. Can we do it? Yes, we can.
So when you say council priority, is that council priority in the budget, or is that council priority as stated in the climate action plan and the new climate action plan that's in development right now? Is that, you think you need more specific direction about, what's voluntary, what's not, what's built into a bonus, like the details of that? Or do you need the priority established? Because I would contend the priority's there. It's maybe, the details are obviously the sticky details.
Well, what we would like is maybe some participation, build a team so that we have Braden's folks and, maybe the CIP folks, other interested parties. CIP, if they start doing green buildings, then we're going to get into the same kind of inspection and, measurements and that kind of thing. So it's advantageous for us to work together. I guess it was just my understanding that you guys would say, or that council would say, hey, we really want to look into adopting this code. Come back to us with some amendments or something that we can approve. And maybe, direct staff to, form some kind of a group so that we work on it collaboratively.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm still in this I'm just still stuck in my head thinking that, I know that we're in the midst of negotiating and working on a climate action plan 2.0. And I think some of the recommendations might even be stronger than they were in climate action plan 1.0, because we are in more of a climate crisis than we even realized. So I guess I'm unsure at what point does the climate action plan is seen as a priority, or is the priority how council decides how we want to drive our budget? Are we creating a priority by investing? Because, right now our current investment in the CIP is only 22% of that's requested for the climate neutrality goals. So like, I see your point, like you need a staff person to be told given direction by council, but then I don't know, how do you see that climate action plan? What does that mean to you guys in community development when you see that? Does it have to have more meat to it and more specific council direction to be considered established priority?
Well, yeah, Dean may want to speak to that too, because he has really delved into the climate action plan. We see it as a strategic plan, but I have to be honest, we don't go in there and look for our daily tasks. When we are dealing with what we deal with, and so we were asked to look at this, which we're happy to do. If we are asked, and I'm not saying it has to be by council. If that, if the feeling is that that's enough to move us forward, we will do it. I guess it's just a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or maybe it's sounding like a thumbs up to me.
If I can jump in.
I think the climate action plan is important, and I think it's a document that we reviewed when we did our overview. For us, our entering into this, Councilmember QB, for us, when we entered into this, it was a preliminary review. It was something that we were asked to look into. We're at that stage right now. One of the things we learned was our limits. And that's important for a successful adoption or a successful enforcement, right? Because our limits are, we need a broader, more robust team to help us develop this code for whatever the specific vision is for our city overall and our buildings, our green buildings, because the green building code itself has provisions that might bear too much of an impact on a developer or a development to consider. Now, some of those considerations for us as technical staff from a building code enforcement standpoint may not really matter. It's like, are we really concerned about the cost of a residential sprinkler or of a sprinkler in a building? Probably not. For us, we want it to be safe, right? So we have a climate action plan that was that's provided, but yet we as a staff have to be able to also enforce it, or we have to be able to apply it and enforce it. But we also realized in this overview, in this review, it has to have a developed code that works for the city of Tempe. And that's why in the presentation, I make those points, is because it has to be for our city. And without that input, because I didn't have it, we didn't have that overall larger input. Braden, and now we have Anthony Floyd. We have this advice. Maybe Anthony Floyd comes and says, hold on, you may not want to do that. That section worked against us. Those different sorts of experiences, it's something to consider. So I'd say that I think the path is there, but we are just so early on in the path that probably some of your questions could be answered later, more fully. If that's a picture. Yeah,
like if we have a Tempe context to the IGCC and edits, or we could also maybe include green infrastructure standards, right? Because green infrastructure isn't necessarily part of the IGCC, but we could, as Tempe, include that.
Yeah, and one of the things we want to do was look at what we're doing that's green already, right? What are we really doing that's green?
Right.
I feel like dark skies is green. I feel like Donna, you and we talked about it with you for site water, right? Maybe Donna, you could speak on that real quickly. I mean, I think there's certain aspects to what we're doing with the code already that we've touched on, But looking at the green code and comparing them to what we're doing, comparing to what other communities are doing that works, considering the impact economically, maybe bring on someone on our team for impact of economically of what that would look like for our community. I think you bring it all together, and at the end, you'll end up with a real success story that is going to meet the vision of the climate action plan and what that wanted to achieve, but also I think we can have it all ways. It's just whatever development team is established, I feel would make it a success. Us from a technical standpoint, we're always there. And then obviously you would hand it off to us to enforce later. So that's something that you would always hear from me, is that this is something we are going to take on with intent. And with that said, that's where the resources come in. So that's why up front, we want to be as transparent and honest as we can to say, you know what, we have to develop too as a staff along the lines for this code because it is new, even to us. And so that's kind of where it's at. If that helps paint a picture.
It does. Thank you. It does.
Sure.
Jump in here real quick. I'm listening to the conversation and everything, and I know Donna has been a champion of sustainability for many years, and actually oversaw the CIP, the entire city's CIP in engineering. So I know that she's got a great background on this, and Dino, it sounds like you are becoming an expert at it also. So that's cool. So I like that. It sounds like I know that your staffing levels are very minimal and to the point where I think that you guys need more staffing, but it sounds like you would need another staff to enforce this whole project for the green infrastructure. Is that really what you're saying?
So a green building program, if you look at Scottsdale as a model, so green building program is excellent, and they probably established it because of the oversight, right? Part of it, that of the life of the building. Right now, you don't have that efficiency oversight of buildings in our community, right? You wait for permits to come in. We don't cause them to do the work. You don't have a lot of that oversight. We have maintenance if they allow the building to fall into disrepair, of course. We have an enforcement aspect, but we don't do it. We don't enforce from that aspect where the green building's going to come into play. And so basically we don't require permits for carpet, let's say, right? Well, with a green building, we would consider having permits for carpeting. So that's a new development. That's something new to us because we just, that's not even, those are exempt for that type of work. So that's just to paint a little bit of a picture, but we want to be constructive on the mindset of this. We are open-minded as a staff and a team because there is some interest just from us. And like I said in the beginning, Donna and myself, and I don't want to speak for Donna, but we've talked about it enough for me to understand where she's at. But for us, we are interested in it because it is new. It's a new code, but how do we enforce that code? And that's why I keep saying that, because it's important. But yeah, you are correct. We feel that this code, and out of all the additions of the code, this being the 2018 edition, there's value in that just by the way it was developed, because of their broader team, that their development team on this code was extensive. And I didn't even touch on that in the presentation because that list goes on, but it was amazing the different organizations they brought together to develop this code to make it this enforceable. But there's a lot of sections in this code that we would have to take a hard look at to say, wait a minute, do we want to enforce this? And I know for a fact that Scottsdale has highly amended the 2015 code. They were very careful about what they adopted. So that's all part of it. That's rolled into it. But it will be a green building when you're done. It's not like you're going to gut the code to where you don't have a real green building. I think we can have it all the ways that we would want it, but we would create a code for, like I say, what I'm calling affectionately the Tempe Green Building Code. Or that's what we're calling it. So, but that's just as a reference point. But, Braden, I think, I point to Braden because I think Braden could be a great help. We need that input. We need those insights. And I've already sought that. He's already helped us even with this presentation. He sat in my office with me and helped guide me on the presentation. Chad Weaver, Donna, we've had Mbika from planning who reached out to Anthony. So we've already had some of this teamwork. Okay, we didn't do it alone. I didn't do it alone. I knew this was bigger than me, but I think it's even bigger than what we did, right? The team has to go out a little bit further. So that's.
Well, yeah, thanks so much. And it's like, I'm so glad and delighted that Anthony Floyd is involved as well. And I know him very well, and he is really a leader in the Valley. And so it's so delightful that he's stepped up to assist, because I know, it does take work and does take effort. And I so appreciate the supplemental request too. So I really appreciate it, Dino. Thank you so much. And Donna, thank you so much for all your leadership.
Yes, thank you. It sounds like we're really have a good kind of a good plan, and we just need to give you guys the resources to execute it. So I like it, and I really like the teamwork, everyone working together from the different departments, so we're not doing the silo thing. So that's really important and very functional. And the carpet in the city is recycled. Any new carpet that's ordered is recycled carpet, just for the record, Dino.
Did you do that?
I did. I absolutely did. So I was pretty proud of that. So anyway, so I also like the fact that we're partnering with Scottsdale and our neighborhood communities, and so we don't have to necessarily recreate their wheel. We can have a lot, go off with a bang instead of having to figure out everything ourselves, just to make it happen faster. So that's really cool, because Councilmember QB and myself really like to get things done. So anything we could do to make it more fast. So okay.
Dr. I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify direction. So I see the next steps as some clarification from the city manager as to whether you need additional council direction in order to move forward with an international green construction code policy, whether the climate action plan gives staff that direction or whether there's additional direction needed. So that's one. I think that's one next action step. I think the next other action step that I heard was you would like a presentation from engineering and transportation next month to understand what a policy that requires the use of international green construction code for city buildings would look like. Those are what I feel like the next two policy steps are, as you just articulated. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding. And then also to hear maybe formally from the Sustainability Commission as well would be a good idea.
It's on the Sustainability Commission discussed it last month, and they can make another formal decision with a letter to your committee and council at their next council meeting.
Thanks, Braden. Thanks for bringing that around, and thank you for the idea to bring in Maryland. That's really important, because we do have some perhaps new builds coming up. We don't often have a brand new building in Tempe, and we have the opportunity to really have it be a showcase. So thank you so much for bringing that up and rounding out the discussion.
You're welcome.
Exactly. Really good presentation, Dino and Donna.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. It's very informative.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Keep up the good work, everybody. Okay, we will now move on to item 3C, which is announcements. Councilmember QB, do you have any announcements?
I think, yes, but I think there might be a new agenda item, 3B3 Arizona Thrives. Is that a agenda?
Oh, yes. Oh, I apologize. Thank you.
No worries. No worries.
I got ahead of myself. Okay, yes. Our next agenda item is item 3B3, Arizona Thrives. And I believe we have Braden Kay back to give the presentation and tell us a little bit more about this. Braden?
Yes, before we start, we're going to show a video. Alex, are you ready to do that?
Yes, give me a moment just to cue it up. One moment.
I'll introduce it. So this video, so Arizona Thrives is an initiative that's a consortium of universities, cities, businesses, nonprofits that are all talking about the future of Arizona and how we invest in a sustainable economy and sustainable environment. Phoenix has considered this adoption, and this is a ABC 15 report discussing Phoenix's joining Arizona Thrives. And tonight we're going to discuss whether it's appropriate for Tempe to join this initiative as well.
Great, thank you.
Not just to rebound back to where we were before, but also to grow.
All new for you this morning, a big addition to a growing collaboration, striving to give Arizona a stronger economy that is also sustainable.
The rebounds, Megan Thompson live for us in Phoenix with more on the Arizona Thrives Alliance. Megan, good to see you this morning. Explain to us what this is about.
Good to see you, Nick and Kaylee. Yes, this alliance includes more than 20 different partners. And right here behind me at City Council chambers here in Phoenix, the city of Phoenix recently voted to become part of this task force. Now, the task force goal is to come up with a feasible plan in both the short term and the long term for Arizona to produce clean air, clean energy, and a booming economy with all of that. They're not only trying to get people back to work amid the pandemic, but they're trying to change what the workforce really looks like.
The way we see this, Arizona Thrives is an opportunity for us to recover faster
and more financially secure. Mike Peel is Local First Arizona's statewide sustainability director. They were one of the first organizations to join the Arizona Thrives Alliance, which is supported by the Nature Conservancy.
We can attract more high-wage jobs, improve the air we breathe, reduce the impact of heat to improve the livability of communities.
Peel says he thinks the city of Phoenix pledging their commitment at a recent council meeting is a big deal.
It feels more likely to be achieved.
The Arizona Thrives Alliance has been working over the last year amid the pandemic to discuss ways to create clean air and clean energy within businesses and the community. He knows a lot of focus has been simply on staying afloat, but he believes short-term and long-term discussions cannot be put off much longer on energy efficiency.
The pandemic has shown us that some of our most vulnerable populations are affected the most, and Arizona Thrives is working to improve health and quality of life and economic opportunities for all.
The collective goal to meet or exceed the Clean Air Act quality standards and achieve net zero carbon neutrality by 2050.
And the way we're looking at that is these three areas. One is how we power our economy, then is how we move, and then is where we live and work.
Peel says the nearly 24 participants have been meeting virtually, using data and expertise to create a path amid the pandemic that they hope will get our economy into an even better place than it was before.
We need to be thinking ahead now around where are we getting with clean air, clean energy, and a stronger economy for all Arizonans.
Local First Arizona also offers a way for local business owners to get involved in this goal. They have a program called Scale Up, which is a workshop series where business owners can learn how to create a more sustainable workplace. We'll talk more about that coming up in our next half hour. For now, reporting live in Phoenix, I'm Megan Thompson for The Rebound Arizona.
Well, I don't know about you, Councilmember Adams, but I say sign us up.
I know. I agree.
So we would bring this to the work study on April 8th, would it be? And make that suggestion, and then it would have to go to council for a resolution?
Yeah, yeah, that's how Phoenix and Flagstaff and Tucson have done it. They all went for a resolution to officially join Arizona Thrives. I have a brief PowerPoint to walk through the alliance if you would like to learn a little bit more.
Sure, we should.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. And then I'll also discuss sort of a few things that I think need to accompany adopting this. So I'll walk you through it, and then we'll talk about the caveats. So next slide, please. So the Arizona Thrives is led out of the Nature Conservancy, and these are some of the Nature Conservancy folks that are running that program. Next slide. They have a really impressive leadership council, including my colleague Willa at the City of Phoenix, who does sustainability policy for Mayor Gallego, SRP, TEP, APS, and Gary Dirks, one of my mentors at Arizona State University, is on there as well. And Mike Peel, a very close collaborator at Local First, as well as a favorite Tempe collaborator, Heidi Kimball, who many of us know. So it's really a great group of folks that they've put together that are doing this, as well as one of my other mentors, Kelly Barr from SRP. Next. So here's just a quick overview. Next. So basically, this has had its official launch. They've been working on this for about 2 years to try to come up with this statewide agenda for a sustainable economy for Arizona. Next. 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 So this is really important. I love what they've done here. So they really have a very clear articulation of what a sustainable Arizona looks like, and they're really focused on clean air, clean energy, and highway jobs and a healthy Arizona. So those are absolutely in line with Tempe's climate action plan. I think they did a really nice job of articulating some clear goals for what we should be working on across the state. I will say that we work very closely with cities across the state of Arizona, but specifically Flagstaff, Tucson, and Phoenix. They have all already joined. So because they believe it's in line with their climate and sustainability work. And I think the argument could be made that Tempe belongs in that group of cities that's really leading the way on sustainability and climate issues. Next slide. So this gets into the details of the types of things that we'll be working on. So clean air, reducing auto emissions. That's something that Councilwoman Kuby and Mayor Corey Woods did a press conference on recently. Obviously, there's looking further into electric vehicles and trying to promote that. Our office has been working on that both for fleet as well as for community electric vehicles. We have a budget supplemental for a community electric vehicle roadmap in this upcoming budget cycle. And then obviously there's mobility efforts in terms of moving forward on transit-oriented development. We've certainly been doing that with transit-oriented development, the streetcar, the light rail, and the new work that you're going to see in the next several months on mobility hubs. So that's already something we're working on. And then obviously I don't need to tell you about Tempe's commitment to tree cover. So all 4 of these clean air policies are things we're already working on as a city and really excited about. And then there's the clean energy side, energy efficiency, industrial and commercial transportation, forest health and biomass is more of a statewide issue than a local Tempe issue, but something that we've worked with SRP on in the past and really do believe in. And then obviously I sit on the Sustainability Advisory Board for SRP and remain very close to the sustainability team at APS, and we're constantly working with them on energy storage innovation, utility research. We just recently put in a grant with SRP and the Institute for Market Transformation on sustainable energy technologies with the Department of Energy. Councilwoman Arredondo Savage was advocating for that in a White House roundtable today. So these are all things that across the city we're working with partners on. So none of this is particularly new, and it's great to have this statewide framework that's articulating things we're already working on locally. Next slide. So these are some of the key goals for clean air and energy and some of the guiding principles. I think it's really, they really are thinking about benefiting the entire economy. There's an equity component to this work. And then there's also the component of really seeing the connection between sustainability, clean air, and public health. And that's something that we've been very passionate about working on, especially when we're looking at the effect of extreme heat on public health. Next slide. So these are sort of the three pathways that they're going to be working in and thinking about: how we power our economy. So that's the energy piece; how we move, that's mobility piece; and where we live and work. Next. And then looking at the economy in terms of manufacturing as well as agriculture and forestry. Next. This gives you a sense of some of the roles that Arizona Thrives is going to be playing, some of the actions that are going to take. So, you know, part of this is we haven't had a lot of statewide policy in these spaces. And so Arizona Thrives attempts to lay out this kind of statewide policy. Next. This is really important. These are the community organizations that are jumping on board to Arizona Thrives. You'll see some fellow cities that we like to include ourselves in, universities, and some very important nonprofits. So we would be joining a really great list of folks that are already on board. Next. And then these are industries. So there's a lot of industry involvement in this work, and that's really exciting too. Next. So before I finish, you can stay here. I guess the one thing that we would consider when you bring it forward is that the current Arizona Thrives goal for carbon neutrality is 2050, and our current community carbon neutrality goal is 2060. So it doesn't match the Arizona Thrives goal. So you have the option of, when you adopt Arizona Thrives, to amend your community-wide carbon neutrality goal to change it from 2060 to 2050. I will say, since we adopted our goal several years ago, the utilities have now adopted 2050 goals. Before they had not, and they suggested that we should not have a 2050 goal, but they've changed their policies on the 2050 goal. Yeah. And now Arizona Thrives is in support of the 2050 goal. So I would say, if you're going to go through the trouble of doing an ordinance to adopt Arizona Thrives, that you use that opportunity to also, change the community carbon neutrality goal to 2060, from 2060 to 2050. That's an option that if you choose to take it. And with that, thank you so much for your time in allowing me to walk you through this exciting program this evening.
Yeah, Councilmember Kuby, do you have some questions?
Well, it looks like you have the presentation already, Dr. K, so that's very good. I assuming that you agree, Councilmember Adams, I would love to include this in the April 8th meeting. And it's so refreshing to see a collaboration with cities and nonprofits and small businesses and large businesses and universities and the utilities. The utilities, it's so important to have them on board, and the evolution they've made is really heartening. And so I feel really comfortable going forward to council with that and the recommendation to adopt a 2050 carbon neutrality goal. And we can't create clean air just in Tempe. We have to exist as a region. We have to work together as a region. It's so important. And so I'm fully in support.
I agree. I completely agree. Braden, that was a great presentation, very informative. So thank you for the presentation. And yeah, we need to get on this and join it. So I'm very comfortable moving forward with it. So thank you so much. Go ahead.
And out of respect for the Sustainability Commission, I know there'll be time for them to weigh in before we officially adopt it, right?
Yeah, before a resolution goes before council, they'll have time. They're going to see a presentation from me at their next council meeting in April. They'll be able to write you a letter. If they choose to vote on a letter of support, that would be available before a resolution came in front of you.
Very good. Yes, we definitely want to include them in the decision. Okay. I think do you have any other questions, Lauren, on this?
Oh, are we we're into announcements? Yeah. So
yeah, we're into announcements. Yeah, the item 3C. Go ahead.
Last year, and thank you so much, Councilmember Adams, you were a big champion of creating Dolores Huerta Day in the city of Tempe. And so we celebrate Dolores Huerta Day. It's a holiday. It's not a paid holiday, unfortunately, but it's a holiday nonetheless. And Dolores Huerta turned 90 years old in 2020. She's 91 on April 10th. And so I just wanted to see if Braden, we could pull you up front, Braden, again, and ask you if there's anything happening to acknowledge Dolores Huerta Day in Tempe on the 10th.
Yeah, so we're going to be working on a press release to talk about several really exciting things that are coming up for Earth Month. So we are doing more outreach on our climate action plan update, and we're doing a really exciting program with Dr. Lauren Withacombe-Keeler and Marta Burbis, where we are doing story walks. So these are walks that you can take in parks, read stories about climate action in Tempe, and text us back information that you want us to consider in the climate action plan. So that's one exciting thing we're doing. We're also starting applications for our Cool Kids program, and we'll come back in a future month to talk about Cool Kids. And one of the things, Cool Kids is basically neighborhood-based MIAC councils that will be in 2 neighborhoods in Tempe to work on youth-driven climate action. And we had a suggestion from a Tempe high school student that wrote us a support letter for Cool Kids. Elizabeth Holman also is the student that worked with Councilwoman Kuby on establishing Dolores Huerta Day. And Elizabeth thought it would be a great idea for us to use Dolores Huerta Day as a way to get more information out about climate action in Tempe and more information about the youth councils that are associated with our new Cool Kids program. So we will be having a 2-hour youth climate justice training on Dolores Huerta's 91st birthday. It will be from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And it's going to include training on how to do climate justice work by Masavi Perea from Chispa. We also are going to have some local social media influencers, including the woman that runs Chispa's social media account, Naomi Gonzalez. She's going to be running with a few of her collaborators a social media training to use social media for climate policy. And then we're also going to have some breakout sessions with local Tempe youth to talk about the importance of Dolores Huerta, what she meant as a mentor, as well as getting advice from Tempe youth on how we can use Cool Kids to advance climate action in the city. So, Dolores Huerta obviously is a huge inspiration to many across the country, many in the state, and now to Tempe with our official recognition of her. And this Elizabeth had this amazing suggestion that we use the day as an opportunity to attract more attention to the youth climate movement in Tempe, as well as to our new program, Cool Kids. So please feel free to share information about this day. We have some new temporary staff or staff members that are going to be working with us on this, 2 climate justice fellows that'll be running this program, and we're really excited to see how it goes. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
Does Dolores know we're doing these things on her birthday?
So she does know that we created Dolores Huerta Day. It's funny, when we were researching this, I had some questions for the Dolores Huerta Foundation. So I called on a Friday in July at 5 o'clock California time, because it was in California. And I talked to this woman and I told her about how Dolores Huerta was such an influence in my life and how amazing she is, a model for our young people, going on in my intense way that I sometimes do. And then there was silence, and then I heard this voice say, "Well, thank you so much. I'm so honored by what you're saying." And I realized I was talking to Dolores Huerta, and of course, Friday at 5 o'clock in July, and she's working, So I do want to extend an invitation to her, because since it's going to be virtual, it may be actually much easier to get her to pop in and just welcome the students. It's aimed mostly at middle school and high school students, but it would be so impactful, I think, to have a word of welcome from Dolores Huerta. So I'm going to reach out and try. Let's hope. But she coined the phrase "si se puede," and hopefully, yes, we can get her at that event.
That's great. Yeah, that would be so fun. Let's call her. Let's just give her a call one of these days.
Yeah, we should just do
Councilmember
this
Cube.
meeting, but no, it's not on the agenda.
Right. Rats. Okay. Do you have any other announcements?
Not, are we going to new business? Oh, I don't have any more announcements, no, but I have new business, but that's.
Okay. Yeah, that's next. New business. And I just have a couple announcements. The city of Tempe hosted Vaccine 411 featuring local COVID-19 experts from Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department and Tempe St. Luke's Hospital on Facebook. It was a great informative video and can be viewed online. Also, the state has opened up vaccinations for 16 and older, while appointments offered today were booked within 20 minutes. Wow, that's fast. More appointments are expected to open up on Friday. And also the Kiwanis Center. I'm happy to inform the folks that our fitness centers are opening at Kiwanis, Escalante, and North Tempe. Lap swimming has also reopened at Kiwanis Pool with swim lessons starting in April. So those are my announcements, and then we can go to new business.
So yeah, I was thinking, I would like to discuss, it doesn't have to be at the next meeting, but just the possible reduction of solar impact fees for developers. We struggle sometimes getting developers to put solar in their projects, and sometimes they'll say it's solar ready or they can do a small element, but if we reduced our impact fees for solar, it might end up getting less revenue, but we might end up getting more because we might have more uptake from developers, who'll choose to put in solar. So I don't want that to be an impediment, and I don't know if it's the right kind of policy. I don't know what staff thinks about it. And, ultimately, I don't know what, council will think, but I was wondering if we could just explore the issue at an upcoming meeting to be named by staff.
I think that's a great idea, Councilmember Cubie. Does staff want to say anything about that right now, or you want to just, we can explore that next time?
Yeah, that would be a request to Shelley Seiler to bring back information on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I said, It doesn't have to be next month. It could be whenever is convenient. So there's a lot.
Councilmember Adams, Councilmember Cubie, I will speak to staff about that and see if we can get that scheduled on a future meeting agenda.
Okay. Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Kristen. Any other new business you would like to bring forward, Councilmember Cubie?
I'm good.
Okay. Okay. And okay. Well, I don't have any other new business to bring forward. I would like to let everybody know that our next committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 28th at 6 p.m. And thanks to all the staff that did such amazing presentations tonight. We really appreciate your hard work and just great job. And we are adjourned. Thanks and have a great night.
Thank you so much. Well done, everyone. Well done, Councilmember Adams, our chair.
Thank you. You're up next month.
Bye.
And Casper says goodbye.
Casper the cat. Bye.
Yep. All right. Bye-bye.